Welcome back, everyone, to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We are here for a little Notre Dame Recruiting Hour, live here and bringing it to you guys on Thanksgiving. Nothing can stop us here at Irish Breakdown. Make sure you go to boards.irishbreakdown.com, by the way, for your latest recruiting and team intel as we get closer and closer to Notre Dame's last regular season game against Stanford University this weekend, 7 o'clock Eastern Time at Stanford. Want to bring you all a few fun topics. This is actually a one that I've been really looking forward to because this is another one of those fantastic double interview podcasts. You heard it here first, folks. We're gonna have two different interviews, both pre-recorded, that will be playing during the podcast today, and two really interesting topics that I wanted to hit into. So you're gonna have four total segments. First segment, just going to do a little bit of a latest in recruiting. There's a lot of news that have been kind of circulating over the last week or so. We had a commitment in the 2025 class for Notre Dame. We saw a 2024 target that has fizzled and is not in a good state there. So we'll talk about all the latest news. We'll also hit on some of the players in that segment that are fighting for state championships coming up this weekend. So a lot to get into there. We'll then hit an interview with Daniel Anderson, star running back out of Bryant High School in the state of Arkansas, pre-recorded again. Sean Davis and I will take you through a little bit of what's the latest with him and how is he feeling about the commitment that he made a couple months ago and just how everything is finishing the season because Bryant is fighting for their sixth straight state championship. So we'll get in with Daniel there. Segment 3 for today, we're going to be talking about secondary recruiting, but I'm going to take it from a couple different angles. We're going to talk corner, we're going to talk safety, but I think a couple key topics that I really want to hit in on both those positions is one, Mike Mickens has been revered as a fantastic developer of talent and a really good recruiter at Notre Dame. Well, fast forward, to the 2025 recruiting class. I think he has a chance to put together the best recruiting class that Mike Mickens has put forth for the University of Notre Dame. Also, Chris O'Leary, safety coach for Notre Dame, has had a lot of naysayers as far as how good of a recruiter he can be. And to be completely honest, he's had a lot of misses so far in his Notre Dame career, albeit a still very young football coach on the college level. But 2025 is a make it or break it year in the recruiting side of things for Chris O'Leary. And I think he has a chance to quiet the criticism in 2025 and really start to move the needle more towards where Notre Dame's safety play has to be in order for them to be a championship team. So we'll hit in both those topics there, which will be a perfect lead in to the last segment of the day where I am going to talk to Ivan Taylor, star 2025 safety out of Winter Garden, West Orange in the state of Florida. Son of Ike Taylor, former Pittsburgh Steeler great, also went to the University of Louisiana. They used to call it the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, but for whatever, or they used to call it Louisiana Lafayette, excuse me. And for whatever reason now, they dropped the Lafayette and it's just University of Louisiana, whatever. Different conversation for another day. But a conversation I will be having is with Ivan Taylor, who is arguably the top safety recruit on the board for the University of Notre Dame in 2025, a player that they are making a strong push for. So I'm going to update his recruiting. What better, I know you all love to read articles, but what better way to hear about how recruiting's doing than to hear from the man himself? So we'll hit on Ivan Taylor there. Segment 1, let's start us off with these topics, some key things that you need to know in the wonderful world of Notre Dame recruiting over the last week. First bit of news that I'm sure you all didn't miss unless you're living under a rock was on Friday. It was at 5:30 Eastern time, and we talked about it afterwards. I actually talked about it with Sean Stiers on IB Nation Sports Talk. Cree Thomas, 2025 cornerback out of Phoenix, Arizona, Brophy Prep. And if Brophy Prep sounds familiar, it is because it is the former high school of current Notre Dame All-American cornerback Benjamin Morrison. Well, Cree Thomas committed to the University of Notre Dame over offers from Oregon, Wisconsin, Arizona, and several others. It came down to a Notre Dame versus Wisconsin battle. Notre Dame edged it out for a plethora of reasons. And to be very honest with y'all, and I've said this countlessly, so there shouldn't be any question of whether I'm being honest here or not. This was a Notre Dame battle to lose for several months, in my opinion. I think that they had been the foreseen leader. Now, I will give Wisconsin a lot of credit because Wisconsin had also done a great job. I think that if wherever Cree Thomas was going to select, he was going to go up north. He was going to go up to somewhere in the Midwest, whether that is Notre Dame or Wisconsin. He ends up obviously picking Notre Dame. And this is one where he had visited Notre Dame for the USC game, which was the first game visit. Then he came back 2 weeks later to come to the Pittsburgh game. And at that point, anytime a kid makes a quick turnaround like that, the antenna should go up a little bit, right? As far as that Notre Dame's pushing for him, he likes Notre Dame. Then he makes 2 trips in a 3-week span. There's probably smoke to that fire, right? There usually is. And at that point, and kind of how Cree told it, is he was very sure after the USC game, he wanted to come back one more time to just kind of solidify all his thoughts. And that's kind of why he came back for Pitt. And obviously everything that he needed to see had been seen. His father is a college football coach. His mother has been a big support for him as well. He had a great support system throughout this process. He talked a lot about the academic side for things. In fact, when I asked him about the main reasons for picking Notre Dame, academics was number one. He talked about academics. He talked about the alumni and the connections that you can create at Notre Dame and will set you up for the rest of your life. And then he talks about football. That was kind of the string of sequencing for what mattered to Cree Thomas. So it was a foregone conclusion, I think, for a few months. The question was more about when, not if, Cree Thomas was going to be a part of the class. And Notre Dame got a really talented defensive back that I think could play outside corner in the zone heavy scheme. I think he could play nickel if you need him to. And I think he could definitely play safety. You've seen him do a little bit of everything during his career Brophy Prep. And he's been a monumental player for them. And I think that after talking to his coach, Jason Jewell, who coached both Benjamin Morrison and Cree Thomas, he was very, very excited for what Cree Thomas could be down the road. He talked a lot about his long striding and his range and his ability to play multiple positions, versatility he brings. Cree Thomas is a really good pickup for Notre Dame on Monday. I dropped a bit of news. I forget if it was on Monday or if it was Tuesday. I think it was Monday. But a player that I had reported on last week, about a week and a half ago at this point, was 2024 defensive lineman out of South Garner in the state of North Carolina, Nandi Agboko. 6'4", 250 pounds, committed to the University of Georgia, has been committed to the University of Georgia for several months. This is a player that Notre Dame was pushing for tremendously. Notre Dame wanted him in the class. And they actually got a unofficial visit from Nandi Agboko for the Ohio State game, which was monumental. It really was. I mean, they were able to get him to come up with his brother on his own dime to come check out the University of Notre Dame when he's committed to the University of Georgia that has won back-to-back national championships. It's notable. It really is. Can't undersell it. And honestly, over the last few weeks, Notre Dame have been making a hard charge. University of Florida was another school that made a hard charge as well. But this was either Nandi Agboko was going to stick with Georgia or he was going to flip to Notre Dame. Those were the two options. That was at the end of it. And it seemed like things were trending great in Notre Dame's direction. And as I reported, kid's a 3.8 GPA. He's of Nigerian descent, and his family really values education and the life after athletics. It made a whole lot of sense, the potential fits with the University of Notre Dame. Unfortunately for Notre Dame, he is a man of his word. And my report was basically, he had sent a text message the night before that had read, to the Notre Dame coaches, all of them, that really appreciate the effort, really appreciate the relationships they would build, and hope that they can continue their relationship. But he is 100% committed to the University of Georgia. So that kind of ended the push for Nandi. I mean, it's a situation where you were trying to find another interior player to fit with Sean Sevillano and bring that brute strength and size and athleticism to the table. Would have been a great flip for Notre Dame. Doesn't work out. Namdi is sticking with his pledge to the University of Georgia, which it's his decision, right? And he said he's a man of his word, and that's very admirable. It really is. Now, is there going to be a next step for Notre Dame? I anticipate Notre Dame over the next month, keeping feelers out there for some kids. I would anticipate that. Would I necessarily predict that they are going to flip a defensive tackle in 2024 before early signing day? No, I would not do that. No, I don't. It's not going to be easy, right? And I'm curious to see what the next step is after that, because this part's unclear. Everything I've told you already is clear. This part is unclear. Do you now, to supplement that scholarship that you were planning to give out in 2024, does that trickle over to 2025? Do you take an extra interior defensive lineman in 2025? Do you go to the transfer portal in this offseason to get depth to that room? I don't know. I don't 100% know the answer to that question, but there is a conversation that's going to keep continuing, and one that I'm interested to keep having, because a lot of things can happen from here, and things are a little bit unclear at the moment. So, Nandi Agboko, that's a little bit of his update there. You guys may have missed this, but on Tuesday nights, Omaha, Nebraska West Side won their second straight championship, second straight state championship in the state of Nebraska, in their third in 4 years. It was 3 now, to the credit of Teddy Rezac, Anthony Rezac, and that senior class for Omaha West Side. Now, obviously, I want to talk about Teddy Rezac mostly because he is the one that is currently committed to the University of Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame is trying to get Anthony Rezac to come as a preferred walk-on. We'll see. They also have a 2025 linebacker by the name of Christian Jones that Notre Dame likes a ton, that they are recruiting heavily. But Teddy Rezac, 2024 linebacker commit, viewed as a rover in Notre Dame's system, wins the state championship. And not only did he win the state championship, my friends, 13 total tackles and 2 tackles for loss in the state championship. Beat, and I want to read some of these scores in a second. Beat Elkhorn South 56-0 in the state championship game. That's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive. And I know what you're saying is, is that like an aberration? Is that a one-game one-off? No. Go. If you go look at the schedule this season for Omaha West Side, I'm going to read these scores real quick to y'all. Omaha West Side beat Creighton Prep 57-7. Then they defeated Grand Island 45-0. Then they defeated Bellevue West 45-12. Millard North 49-7. Defeated Norfolk 41-0. North Platte 63-0. Kearney 56-0. Millard South 31-14. They then defeated their next opponent 56-0. They played Creighton Prep again in the playoffs and won 54-6. They played Bellevue West and beat them 49-0. Defeated Millard West 41-0, and then played Elkhorn South and won 56-0. Their closest game of the year was against Millard South in a 31-14 victory. Otherwise, their closest game of the season was against Bellevue West, where they won 45-12, 13-0, Omaha West Side. I have never seen, and I'm sure there has been, but this is just my recollection, a more dominant team in a season than what I saw from Omaha West Side this year. Literally, nobody was even close to beating them, guys. Like, nobody. Not even close. Absurd. Congratulations to Teddy Rezac. Great victory, obviously. Games MVP, 13 total tackles, 2 pass breakups. Excuse me. I think I may have misspoken, said tackle for loss earlier. 2 pass breakups, playing from his safety position. He will be a very interesting player to follow during his Notre Dame career. I now wanted to hit on some of the guys that you should be paying attention to on Friday, because there's going to be a lot of guys that are still fighting for state championships. Okay. So 2025 running back out of Tampa Bay, Florida Jesuit, Justin Thurman. Jesuit will be taking on Gaither, who is 7-5. It'll be Friday at 7:30 Eastern time. Thurman comes to this game with 16 total touchdowns on the year. Unfortunately, he was not able to play in last week's playoff game, dealing with a little bit of an injury, but I have gotten confirmation that Justin Thurman will be back this week. So make sure to tap in as they continue their strong season. 10-2 on the year now is Jesuits. Another running back in 2025 coming back from an injury. Bryant High School in the state of Arkansas, who has now won 5 straight state championships, going for number 6 this year. 10-1 will be heading to Bentonville, who's 8-3 on the season in the playoffs. This will be Friday at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Daniel Anderson came back last week, wasn't used a ton in their magnificent victory, 56-32 over Rogers, but expect him to start getting a bigger workload as he comes back. Logan Saldate, Palma High School, Salinas, California, 2024 wide receiver. Palma sitting at 8-4. They'll be traveling to Alisal, who is 10-2 on the season. That game will be played on Friday at 7 o'clock. Funny enough, Alisal, who is 10-2, one of their one losses this year was actually to Palma in the regular season. They lost 42-15. So we've seen it before. Maybe Palma continue their run after beating the number 1 seed last week. Anthony Knapp, Roswell, Georgia High School, 2024 offensive lineman. Roswell sitting at 11-1 will take on Marist, who is also 11-1. That game will be at 7:30 Eastern time. Last Friday, Roswell defeated Lanier 59-17, in which the Roswell offense went for 494 total yards and 8 touchdowns. Logan Thomas, Lakewood, Ohio, St. Edward, they will be taking on in the state championship game Hillard Bradley. Logan Thomas has been dominant this season. 42-7 victory they had over Medina last week. 7 quarterback pressures and a pass breakup last week for Logan Thomas. Can expect him to continue his strong run here. Kingston, Villamoasa, Bellflower, California, St. John Bosco, 2024 linebacker. They will be taking on, traveling to Mater Dei, which is one of the premier programs in all of high school football. Both teams sitting with an 11-1 record overall. This is a game where both these teams are not too fond of one another. So you could expect a very physical game, especially because St. John Bosco already played Mater Dei this season during the regular season, and St. John Bosco won 28-0. So you know Mater Dei, the Monarchs, are going to be pushing for some payback this weekend. And then the final player to keep an eye on, 2024 cornerback, Cincinnati, Ohio, Archbishop Moeller star Carson Hobbs, coming off of a dominant victory over Tabron Benny Powell and Lakota West last week, which he had 4 pass breakups and a scoop and score in a 22-0 victory. Archbishop Moeller will be traveling to Springfield, who's sitting at 9-5. Archbishop Moeller's 10-4. Springfield is the home of 2024 cornerback Aaron Scott, who's committed to the University of Ohio, or Ohio State University, OSU. So those are the games to keep an eye on this weekend, folks. It's a little bit of the recruiting roundup, if you want to call it that, a little bit of the recruiting recap. Next on the podcast, we're going to get into my conversation as well as Sean Davis's conversation with 2025 running back commit to University of Notre Dame, Mr. Daniel Anderson. Thank you for tuning in, though, to this portion of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Welcome, everyone, to another exclusive interview here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. My man, Sean Davis, of course, is with me for this one, talking to Mr. Daniel Anderson, star running back out of Bryant High School in the state of Arkansas, 2025 commit to the University of Notre Dame. It's been a wild ride. I know, Daniel, you've been dealing with a little bit of a foot injury coming back, but making the commitment earlier this season, man. It's been a wild couple months, brother. How's everything been going for you?
Everything's going pretty good.
That's awesome, man. Well, I think first and foremost, before we ask about the relationship with Notre Dame and just how everything's been, so, obviously you were a player that decided to commit September 25th. I'm sorry, September 23rd. Excuse me. I'm getting my dates all jumbled, obviously, during the big Ohio State game, and UNCJ CJ May both went public that night, obviously, for a big boost to the Notre Dame program in the 2025 class. But I just want to ask, I know you were dealing with a little bit of a foot injury. Just how's health? How's rehab? How's everything just kind of getting back on that field?
So I just started to work back in about maybe last week or so, but it's feeling really good, and I should be back this week. But we have a bye week, so I'll be back next week. So I should be good to play.
Nice.
And I've been doing physical therapy for the past few weeks and working back in and doing great.
Well, for Sean, for people out there that don't know, Daniel needs to get ready for another playoff run because I think Brian has won what 5 straight state championships. I think
Yes,
that's
sir. We
what they're
have.
working with right now, man. How's the team just outside of getting back from the injury? How's the team looking so far this year?
Man, our team is looking really good. We're all really doing great this year, and it's just good to win another conference championship. And now we're going for the state.
So you grew up, if I'm not mistaken, in Fayetteville, right?
Yes, sir. I did.
You grew up in Fayetteville, and now you're in Bryant, which is literally right outside of Little Rock. It's kind of a suburb of Little Rock. Do you consider yourself more of a Fayetteville kid or more of a Little Rock kid?
I'm definitely more of a Fayetteville kid. Grew up there my entire life, and that's where I lived.
So were you an Arkansas Razorback fan growing up?
Yes, sir. I was.
But despite that, coming up north to play for the
Mm-hmm.
Fighting Irish,
Yes.
Daniel, I just want to ask because obviously I had interviewed you after you made the decision just about why pick Notre Dame, why that was the right decision. Don't want to rehash the whole thing, but I really wanted to talk a little bit about that decision and kind of looking back on it now, right? We are a couple of months now removed from you making that decision, obviously. Looking back on pulling the trigger then, just how happy are you with the decision that you made? Just kind of in retrospect, just kind of thinking back to the whole decision making process for yourself.
I think it was a great decision. I'm very happy about the decision I made, and Notre Dame's just a really good school, and I'm glad I decided to go there.
And you are a part of a class that is shaping up very quickly, man. I mean, we
Yeah.
talk about, since you made that commitment, CJ May the same day, you got guys like Deuce Knight, obviously a star quarterback out of the state of Mississippi, joining the class. Joseph Reef, other defensive end in the state of Illinois. There's been a lot of guys now jumping on shit, man. And I heard that there's a couple guys that could be coming pretty soon. So there's a lot of
Yes,
excitement
sir.
around the Notre Dame program. Talk to me about that 2025 class. How special of a group do you think that could be early on?
Man, I really think we're already looking good, and I think it's only going to get better. I really do. I think it's going to get a lot better, and we're already stacked right now.
It's, Ryan, most people say you need to give a coach 3 to 4 recruiting classes so
Yep.
he can really have his system in play and have his guys in the building. And if I'm not mistaken, that 25 class is going to be Marcus Freeman's 3rd recruiting class. So the impact now, you're coming in, most likely, that's going to be a very experienced football team. Next season, they'll be inexperienced, they'll have some growing pains, but that season is going to be special. Like, what's the expectation? Have the coaches talk to you guys about the situation you'll be coming into, your expectations, and what they want you guys to focus on? Even though you're locked in on your high school squad and finishing the task at their high school career, have you been talking to coaches about, when you come into Notre Dame in 25, this is what to expect, and we expect to be challenging for a national championship?
Right. So we haven't really talked about it much, but just understanding that Notre Dame is such a highly prestigious school, and as just the athletics, how good they are, it's just something I already know coming in that that's something I'll have to expect to look forward to and live up to.
So tell me about the culture at Bryant. You talk about 5 straight state championships. Just having that type of culture where the expectations are always at an all-time high. That has to give you an advantage going to a program like Notre Dame where the expectations, man, I'll just allow you to experience it once you get here, because telling you won't really give you a clear view of what you'll be walking into.
Right. So just being a 5A state championship school, just whenever I got moved up, we was already expected to meet the very standard of being already great, and we were just a very disciplined team, and it's it's a very college ready school, and it's getting me prepared for what I know I'm going to have to get myself into.
Speaking of preparing you for greatness, you will be coached by, in theory, one of the best running back coaches in all of college football, arguably the best. I mean, he has a very good claim based upon Ronald Jones's of the past, what he's been doing, Audric Estime, winning a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. Dylan McCullough has quite the resume, Daniel. And that running back room, Sean talked about the future being special. It's special, right? Even after Audric leaves, you're going to have Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and yourself and Justin Thurman and a lot of great running backs, Keedron Young and Aeneas Williams. This running back room is loaded. Talk to me about how influential Coach McCullough was to making the decision and just how excited you are to be able to learn from someone who has the reputation like Coach McCullough does.
Right. He really inspired my decision. Just right after the bat, after knowing that the way he structures his running back room is just something I really understood and really wanted to get myself into. And he's not just a good coach, he's a good father too, just as a person. He's just a great man. And I'm glad I had his words of wisdom to influence my decision to go to Notre Dame.
You know, Ryan, I remember the first time I met Dylan McCullough and spoke to him when he took the job. And he's like, yo, I don't want all of my running backs to be the same. Like, I'm going to recruit different running backs to my room. He was like, I have a vision. I have a plan. What's his vision and his plan been for you in his talks with you?
Right. So he explains to me that every running back has a set job, and he's going to have those running backs just rotate in and out, and not just one person getting all the glory and all the fame. He's got every running back going and getting the job done, and to overall just help the team instead of just one person. And so when I get there, I love to be able to just be a part of that.
Can you talk to me about South Bend's being there? Because I believe, if I remember correctly, and I believe I am, that you camped there this offseason. You got your offer. You've now been there several times. I think 3 visits to Notre
Yes,
Dame
sir.
at this point, right? So
Yes, sir.
what was the first time like getting on campus? What were your expectations going into that visit? What was it like being there the first time? And how has it continued, I guess, to grow on you the more you've been there?
Right. So my first time, I honestly never really thought I'd be there, and it was almost like a last minute decision to go to Notre Dame as that camp, and the expectations were very high for me, for my performance, and I'm glad that I ended up going. And when I did go there, I did perform really well during the camp, and just getting that offer right after the camp was a huge surprise to me, and I'm just very honored to have that chance in my life.
Well, and what's it been like now being back a couple of times and maybe even planning another trip to try to get back there? You're officially part of the family now. So is it any different now getting back on campus and feeling maybe a different vibe now?
Yes, sir. It definitely is. That Ohio State game the atmosphere was just something different. Although we ended up on a tough loss but it was just amazing getting to meet with the other recruits and make those bonds with them as early as we did, and just getting to experience that atmosphere they have, which is something truly different.
Daniel, Sean and I have been talking about this. Me and Brian Driscoll, also on the YouTube channel here, have been talking about this. You guys at one point had 5 commits in the 2025 class, and they were from 2 players from the state of Florida, yourself from the state of Arkansas, CJ May from the state of Alabama, and Deuce Knight, obviously a big-time quarterback out of the state of Mississippi. 5 players from the Southeast, all committed first in this class, University of Notre Dame. Do you think about that as far as trying to get that Southeast flavor up to Notre Dame? Because honestly, Notre Dame has struggled getting you guys to come up to South Bend, Indiana consistently, but Marcus Freeman has completely flipped that switch, and now you're bringing the Southeast up to South Bend, Indiana, which is very exciting for Notre Dame fans, obviously.
Man, I think it's really cool that we're starting to finally get recruited from just this part, honestly, and it's just glad to get our presence known as up there, and it's just a very strong culture that we're trying to bring up there, and I'm glad we get to do that and be the first to in just a very long time.
What's been the coolest thing you've experienced? Because I'll tell you, when I got this job, I was blessed to start covering recruiting with Irish Breakdown. I went to cover a press conference, and I think the security guard could see me staring down. You had the walkway that leads to the field, and he kept looking at me. He was like, "Go ahead, you can walk down to the field." And I was like, "Oh my God. All right, cool." I can only imagine like what that walk was like for you the first time you took it, walking into such a fantastic stadium with so much tradition, but with everything else on that campus, like Ryan talked about, and you falling in love with South Bend and even that Ohio State game. For you, what has been that most memorable moment, or maybe even a moment that made you say, "This is the place for me"?
It was most definitely the fans. Just during the game, just the really just that presence of them is just everywhere. I've honestly never experienced anything like that before, especially growing up in Arkansas. And I'm just really glad I got to like recognize the team, and just the culture that they have there is so different than we do.
That's amazing.
Can I ask how, I guess, important and influential your family was to helping you make this decision? And more importantly, I guess, when you were ready to make it, what was the reception you got from your parents, from your immediate family, from the supporters around you, as far as you committing to the University of Notre Dame? Just how supportive were they?
So my family was always first, and they're the first people I wanted to ask, and ask about like if I really should like go through with it, and they were all very accepting of it, and really just believed in me and said if I really wanted to, then I should and I could. And so they were the first people I told and the first people I asked. And then I asked Coach Freeman, and he said he was very blessed to accept my commitment to them, and that's really how it just went down. I'm just glad I was able to do that. It really is a blessing.
So thinking back to Daniel, to that game visit of Ohio State, I'm just curious, was it on the tip, like in the back of your mind going into that visit of like, hey, I'm not really sure what I'm waiting for? Or was it like a moment on campus when you got on, you're just like, yeah, it's time. Like, I'm just trying to understand when that thought process came through your mind of like, what am I waiting for? Like committing now and making that decision.
Right. So before that weekend, it was really just a gradual buildup of just thinking like this is my decision and this is what I want to do. And so really the whole reason of going to that game was so I could do it in person, just to show some respect to Coach Freeman and the team. And so
Sure.
really it's just I really knew my decision before I got there, but I had already been thinking about it. And then once we got there is when we made the official announcement.
Was there
What
anybody else that was even close in the race in your mind?
Honestly, it's just the future I want for myself is just very high, and I just want my academics to be somewhere that I can know that I can trust my future to be in. And Notre Dame definitely puts that into that category that I expect for myself.
do you have your snow gear ready for when you come up to South Bend? You got your jacket ready?
Yes, sir. I've thought about that. We're gonna get that down.
Sounds good, man.
Yes, I have to ask this question, Ryan.
Yes.
Just so you know, going back and spanning over 30 years, there's a very, very serious basketball competition culture amongst the football players.
Mhm.
Really?
Can you hoop? Because
Yes, I can.
okay. I'm just letting you know to be ready because it's a lot of trash talking, especially amongst the coaches, because you have coaches and staff that think they can really hoop. So you'll
Yes.
be able to enjoy that the entire time. I'm telling you, it's guys from the 90s that still talk about they were the best basketball player on the team. It is really something that has lasted throughout these
Really?
years with all the Notre Dame players. Absolutely.
Uh,
You'll enjoy
it,
that.
That's
it's
great
a
to know.
it's a thing of legend, Daniel. They
Yeah, it
take their
is.
pickup hoops in
Pretty
South Bend pretty
serious.
seriously, man. They do. They do. My last question for you is, I mentioned some of the names that are already committed to the University of Notre Dame. A lot, I mean, off to a tremendous start in 2025. I'm sure you've gotten the chance to get to know the crew a little bit more. I'm sure the group chat's been popping up. Obviously, you've made the game visit to Ohio State. I know CJ and Deuce and those guys were all on campus, obviously. Can you give us a glimpse into some of the characters that are on that group? Because I know I've gotten to know CJ pretty well. I've gotten to know Deuce pretty well. I know they're pretty big personalities. What type of group is this from a character background perspective, if that makes sense?
So I talked to Deuce a little bit, and I can already tell he's a very funny guy, and he's really cool to be around, and he's just someone I look forward to being a teammate with. So yeah, I'm very very excited about that. And I also been talking to Justin a little bit too, and he's really chill. And I think me and him connect a lot. And so I'm very excited to be teammates with all those guys and make new connections with people.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to be the best part for me, Sean, is just getting to know a few of the guys in the class.
Mhm.
They have a lot of different personalities, which is why they're going to blend really well as a unit. You know, like I feel like if everyone's a jokester, it's like, all right, let's chill down a little bit. If everybody's
Right.
super chill, it's like, where's the outgoing guys? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you guys are a great
Yeah,
great
Ryan,
blend for it.
you know how it is, man. We wait for things to be tied up with the 24 class in December,
Yes.
and then we really start digging deep on the guys in 25 as that class begins to expand going into the spring. And I look forward to not only, continuing to grow and know more about these guys in the 25 class, but watching their class expand and probably being one of the best classes in Notre Dame's last decade because it's starting off that way. It really is.
It really is. And this guy right here, Mr. Daniel Anderson, is a big part of it. Make sure that you're following him and the rest of the class on Twitter, on X, whatever you want to call it nowadays, because that class is going to be jumping pretty soon here. I promise you all that very much. Daniel, appreciate you for joining the Irish Breakdown podcast today, man. It was a pleasure to have you. We'll have to have you back on again, I guess, when the class gets a little bit bigger as it's full suit enough. But thank you so much for joining the show today, man. Really
Of
appreciate
course,
it.
I appreciate your time. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, folks. So I hope you loved the interview with Daniel Anderson, but we are now going to move in to segment 3 of today's show. We're going to be talking about a little bit of secondary recruiting, and I want to hit on a couple key topics that I think are something that you should definitely keep an eye out for and definitely consider moving forward, because there has been some naysayers at the safety position in recruiting, and again, understandably so. But I want to start with cornerback because there haven't been a lot of naysayers there. And I think back to a couple of the classes that Mike Mickens has put together, right? You think of the Chance Tucker, Ryan Barnes, and what was Riley's first name? Anyway, doesn't matter. He's not on the team anymore. But they have that cornerback group. Then, of course, you have a couple years later, the next year, you get Benjamin Morrison. You get Jaden Mickey, which is a great cornerback group. You follow that up with Micah Bell and Christian Gray, and Christian Bell looks like he's going to be a superstar. You have now followed that up with Leonard Moore and Carson Hobbs in the 2024 recruiting class. And I'm here to tell you, folks, as good as that is, and I mentioned All-American in there. I mentioned Christian Gray, who's probably going to be the next big thing. I mentioned guys like Micah Bell and Jaden Mickey, who are both going to be very good football players for Notre Dame, in my opinion. Mentioned Leonard Moore, that I think has tremendous upside. Carson Hobbs, who I think has upside. I mentioned a lot of good corners there. But I'm here to tell you, the 2025 recruiting class for Notre Dame at cornerback might be the best one that Mike Mickens has put together yet. I look at this board and where Notre Dame is with certain corners in 2025, and I'm elated about it, guys. Like, elated. First and foremost, you have a commit in the class now. Cree Thomas, which I talked about earlier in the podcast. Make sure to tune back to the first section of this podcast for a little bit more on him. But he brings a tremendous baseline. Tremendous. You continue your impact in Brophy prep. You also get a 6'1", 175 plus pound corner who can run, who is a good athlete, who is a willing tackler. You have tools there to develop Cree Thomas into being a very good football player on the next level. Also, Mike Mickens has done a tremendous job with several other cornerbacks. And as of right today, Notre Dame wants to push this class to 3. They want 3 cornerbacks in the 2025 class. And they have a chance to put together what is a tremendous cornerback class because they're in great spots with several. One of them, Florida cornerback, Dallas Golden, Berkeley Prep, same high school as former Notre Dame decommit, Keon Keeley, who's an absolute stud. Kid that literally could play corner, safety, running back, wide receiver. He can play whatever the heck he wants. He's that good of an athlete. You're also in a good spot with Mark Zachary out of Ben Davis in Indianapolis, Indiana, who is, look, I thought sophomore film was pretty good, but you want to see more? Junior film has been fantastic. He's been playing corner and safety as well as playing offensive side of the football. You're in a good spot with Mark Zachary. You're also in a pretty good spot with Devin Williams out of Buford in the state of Georgia. A little bit of a smaller corner, but he is feisty. He's explosive. He's really talented. He's been Notre Dame multiple times already. You also, speaking of Notre Dame's multiple times already, Kevin Humes out of St. Francis Academy in Baltimore, Maryland, is kind of the similar-ish style player to what you would have if Devin Williams were to commit to Notre Dame. A little bit smaller, but feisty and explosive. And those things always work well together, right? They always work well together. So if you, in theory, and I think that this is very reasonable, like I don't think this is a stretch, if you get two of the names that I just said, just two, that could potentially be the best cornerback group Mike Mickens has had. Because one, you're getting a three-man class, which I mentioned you had with Barnes, Riley, Tucker, but none of those guys have really panned out to being much other than depth at this point. But you would not only have three players in the 2025 class, I think you would have legitimately as much upside as you've had in a class. I mean, let's say just in a hypothetical, Notre Dame ends up with Cree Thomas, say you end up with Dallas Golden, and you end up with Mark Zachary. Guys, Dallas Golden's a legit top 100 player, might be a top 50 player. Cree Thomas for me is a top 150 to 200 player, somewhere in that ballpark. And I would also say Mark Zachary's a top 150 player. You got three corners that I think could all mesh really well together, which is also a big thing, right? Mike Mickens, give him his roses. And I don't want to give his roses too early because I still want him to coach some dang good football over the next few years. But he's done a tremendous job at the University of Notre Dame. And if he pulls together a 2025 class of that caliber, and hey, man, give him a blank check. Give him a blank check. Keep him coming back. Keep him coming back. He's been that good at the University of Notre Dame. The other part of secondary recruiting, and the one that's less of a sure thing, is safety recruiting in 2025. We have seen a lot of misses over the last few years. Talk about, the debacle in 2022, not getting on anyone in general, missing on Xavier Nwankpa. Talk about 2023, and yeah, you signed two really good players, in my opinion, in Adon Schuler and Ben Minnick, but you also, obviously, you lost Peyton Bowen in the process. Brandon Hillman ends up not getting into school after signing day. So you missed out on two potential high upside players in Brandon Hillman and especially Peyton Bowen. So there were a couple misses there. 2024, a lot of the same, but it was a headache. I mean, you ended up with Bronte Johnson, who was a stud, right? Stud talent. You got a good player in Tabron Benny Powell, and you got another good player in Kennedy Urlacher, but not really stars in that class, right? Like, I think Bronte could be a star, but no surefire things, no high floor players. It's more about the ceilings in that class. And the problem, though, is that when you looked at the 2024 board, there were a lot of guys that had some level of interest in Notre Dame. I think about guys like DeMello Jones and Jalen McClain, DeJuan Lane, but you weren't able to move the needle with any of those guys, man. You just kept missing. You just kept missing. And you kept missing again. It was not a good class for you as far as getting your top targets on the board. Notre Dame didn't do that in 2024. They didn't. But 2025, early on, looks like it's going to be a completely different animal, man. One, you're in a great spot with Ivan Taylor, who I mentioned earlier in this podcast. And we're actually about to hear from Ivan Taylor after this in the fourth section. Winter Garden, West Orange, Florida, who is the son of Ike Taylor, dynamic player, man. 6'1", 6 foot. We'll say 6'1", but yeah, I think he's actually around 6 foot. 6 foot, 170 pounds, can play nickel, can play two high, can play single high, can come down in the box, not afraid to hit. He's just a football player, man. He's a really good player. Top 35 overall player by two different platforms in the 2025 class. That's overall player. That's not safety. Top overall player in the country. So Notre Dame's in a great spot there. They have to close, but it's about to be closing time, it seems. And Notre Dame has put themselves in a fantastic spot with him. They've also put themselves in a good spot with guys like Ethan Long, who's out of Connecticut, Brunswick School. They've also put themselves in a good spot with Jadon Blair down there in Mount Tabor in the state of North Carolina. As of today, Notre Dame is planning to take 2 safeties. Now, that number could change, but as of today, the number is 2. And if hypothetical, you get a Ivan Taylor and Ethan Long class, or you get an Ivan Taylor and Jadon Blair class, that is ridiculous, man. And if the numbers work and you can somehow get all 3, that is maybe the best safety group I've ever seen at Notre Dame ever. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm not a historian of this stuff, but like, that's wild. Ivan Taylor's a legit top 30 player in the 2025 class by multiple platforms. Jadon Blair, for me, is a top 50 player all day with the size and explosiveness. He might even be better than that eventually. Ethan Long is a top 150 football player, really talented kid. Notre Dame has a chance to flip the script, and more importantly, Chris O'Leary has a chance to flip the script because he needs to. He needs to quiet some of the doubts. He needs to. He has a chance to do so. Hopefully he does. And I think he has, but I think he can, which is a great thing to see. That's going to do it, though, for this a little bit of secondary roundup, a little bit of secondary intel in the 2025 class recruiting for Notre Dame. Safety recruiting, I mentioned Ivan Taylor a ton. We're going to hear from Ivan Taylor next. But thank you, as always, for listening to this section of the Irish Breakdown podcast. Now welcoming to the Irish Breakdown podcast, 2025 safety, Winter Garden, Florida, West Orange star, Ivan Taylor. You guys know him on this channel. You should by now, because every time we talk defensive back safety recruiting in the 2025 class, Ivan is typically the first person we talk about because he has been a priority for Notre Dame pretty much for the first time he stepped foot on campus and Notre Dame was able to see him in person, obviously offered him based upon his performance and everything. So, Ivan, I appreciate you for hopping on the show, man. For people that aren't, it's obviously isn't a live interview, but we're doing this on the day before Thanksgiving. So you want to know how nice of a young man this is right here, joining me the day before Thanksgiving, Ivan. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I appreciate you inviting me to your Irish Breakdown. I appreciate it very much.
No doubt, man. No doubt. We're huge fans of you on this channel, man. That's both from the analyst perspective and from the fan perspective. Everybody's like really excited about you potentially fitting in with Notre Dame if that's who you ultimately choose. So let me ask you just kind of to start with, because I want to get into, you've taken multiple game visits, obviously, to Notre Dame this season now, but I wanted to ask you just your initial impressions on Notre Dame. For people that don't know, you camped at Notre Dame, impressed them so much, got the scholarship offer, and obviously your recruiting rankings back up why they are so high on you at this point. You were a consensus 4-star, top 35 player in the class by 2 different recruiting platforms. Take me through, I guess, initial impressions about Notre Dame when you were first going up to visit, just kind of the idea about them and just your initial thoughts about Notre Dame as a program.
Yeah, so actually in the beginning, like, I didn't know much about him. My dad, he didn't want to go up there. My mom couldn't wait to go up there. So I wasn't really expecting anything. We went up there, beautiful campus. We searched up how many people go. It's actually not a lot of people at all. I'm also Catholic, so it fits right in. We went to church before the camp. So before that day, it was just kind of like a breaking the ice. It was definitely a great experience to feel the campus, feel how beautiful it is. During the summer, the weather was 70, 75 degrees. It was really great weather.
Nice. Well, and let me ask you, Ivan, because you have, your offer list is Rams in all of college football, some of the best. Obviously your father, Ike Taylor, being a former, I think you played at University of Louisiana and then obviously in the NFL for a long time. How much of how beneficial have your parents been in helping you navigate the recruiting process? Because only being a junior, it's chaotic, man. Visits, calls, texts. You're getting kind of pulled every way, constantly. How beneficial has your dad's past experience with recruiting and football and your mom also being a support system as well?
Yeah, so my dad, actually, funny story, he's a walk-on at Louisiana Lafayette, so it's kind of new to him, a new experience to him. So he's just going along with me as well. My mom loves it. She's very religious, so me and my mom, my dad have been praying on, where I should go. I go to the Adoration Chapel. I've been going Monday. I'm going to go Tuesday, and then I'm going to go today as well. So it's really a big part of it is God. My dad has provided with that. My mom's helped me with my studies, making sure my grades are up, and then my dad has been helping me a lot with what I can and can't do off the field. What I should look at.
Yeah.
Little things like that. Just being very precise and trying to be a perfectionist.
Well, and let me ask you because, even without, I guess, the big recruiting background as far as like how hectic it is, you mentioned your dad, was a walk-on, so he didn't get like the full what you're getting now. But I guess when you first started getting recruited, and you maybe sat down with your parents, maybe you had a conversation of like, because you already mentioned like your faith is obviously big to you, the religious side of everything. But what were some like key things that I guess maybe you guys honed in on as far as like, this is what I want from a school. This is what's going to ultimately make a good fit for me.
I would definitely say the coaches. Coaches hands down for me. I have a great relationship with my coach right now. You know what I mean? Coach Thompson, he's the head coach for West Orange. All the coaches that are at West Orange, I have a good relationship with. So I just feel like, if I'm going to be there for 3 or 4 years, I want to have a great relationship with the coaches wherever I go. And I feel like I do. I really want to have, like with Coach O'Leary, I feel like we can have a Caleb Williams, Lincoln Riley, coaching and player connection. So that's just how I feel about, Coach O'Reilly and Coach Freeman as well.
Well, and let me ask you, Ivan, because obviously Notre Dame had Kyle Hamilton that came through a few years ago, who's one of the best safeties in the NFL now. And then we've seen what Xavier Watts has been able to do. I mean, he leads the nation in interceptions playing the safety position. How attractive is, I guess, that side of it, right? As far as like Notre Dame is starting to really develop the safety position at a high level.
Right. Honestly, to me, I don't even look at that. I do, but I don't at the same time. I feel like, if you just look at who they put out, it kind of speaks volumes there itself defensively. So I feel like they've always secretly, put people in the league.
Yeah.
But for me, just that doesn't really play an effect to any of it. If you're good, they'll find you. That's what my dad says. So it doesn't matter what college you go to. If they're good, uh, they'll find you for sure. So I
Yeah.
definitely think it's just the coaches for me.
Well, and so you had been on campus multiple times before taking your first game visit for you came originally for the Pittsburgh game and then you came back for Wake Forest. So I want to ask you about the last two visits, obviously game visits. What was that like? Because I know you had seen the campus, you had been around the coaches, you had done all that stuff, right? But seeing a game day visit at Notre Dame, seeing what a game day looks like, that atmosphere, what was that experience like?
It was definitely a good experience. Electric, I'll have to say, it's very electric experience, great experience to be around. The fans, it's always basically sold out. There's probably not a home game where it's not sold out. Alumni comes,
Yeah.
millions and billionaires come, and you wouldn't even know. Student section comes, so it's just a great time. Off and on the field. You just see the excitement that goes on.
Well, and I want to ask a little bit about the 2025 class for Notre Dame if you were to be a part of it, because I see, man, everybody sees it. There's one guy in particular that is recruiting you very hard on Twitter. And that, of course, is Deuce
Deuce,
Knight, who
yes,
is,
sir.
potential 5-star
He's
quarterback
the
in
star. Yeah,
2025. Yeah.
he's the star for real.
What's your relationship like right with Deuce, and what's it like just kind of to see, I guess, that just overall the program from coaches down to the players, they want you obviously to be a part of the class so much.
Nah, Deuce is a great guy. Me and Deuce chop it up all the time. I feel like me and Deuce can get each other better. We were just talking about it. We talk on a daily. So me and Deuce are gonna have a great relationship, trying to make each other better and just things like that.
Nice, man. That's awesome. And I know he gets Notre Dame fans so excited every time he tweets out that picture of you and him for sure. So we'll have to see obviously where things go. Let me ask you just outside of Notre Dame for a second, because like I said, a lot of great schools have been in contact with you. Who are some other schools right now that you would say have also been doing a great job and you've been able to make great connections with?
Yes, sir. I'll definitely have to say Wisconsin, USC, and Louisville, and Tennessee. Those are probably the schools that have reached out most to me.
Okay.
But I feel like Notre Dame has been giving me a lot of love recently. That since the day I went there and the day I went to their camp, they've been nonstop.
So Ivan, I know obviously we talked about it a little bit already, but your dad goes to school in Louisiana. Now you live down in Florida. There's been a really nice string for Notre Dame side of things of recruiting the Southeast in 2025. A lot of Florida kids so far. A lot of, we talked about Deuce from Mississippi and Arkansas and Alabama has all been touched. What are your thoughts, I guess, and how has it changed at all to go up to South Bend, Indiana? Because that is a transition, right? Like demographically, that is a very big difference. Just what was your initial thought of like maybe potentially going up there? And then your thought now, maybe after being there a couple times, as far as like how that transition would be for you if you chose them?
So for me, it really wouldn't change. I was from Pittsburgh. I was born in Pittsburgh, so it's kind of like just to me, it's like going back home. You know what I mean? It doesn't really affect me at all. I would honestly, since I've been in the hot so long, prefer the cold a little bit now
Yeah.
and then. I'm a gloomy day type of guy. I like gloomy days, so I feel like the weather goes perfectly.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah, I completely overlooked the fact that your dad was a Pittsburgh Steeler for a long time. So you're probably up there a decent amount. I'm a
Yes,
Jersey
sir.
guy, man. So I think that cold
Right,
kind
you
of runs
get
through
it.
our blood a little bit. You know what I mean? So,
Correct.
Ivan, the thing I love about your film so much, and I actually did a film breakdown on you for the message board, was that like you're kind of like a Swiss Army knife on the back end. I've seen you do so many things for your high school. I mean, I see you playing man in the slot at times. I see you playing too high. I see you rotating to the middle of the field. I see you robbing short zones, forcing interceptions, coming up in the run game. How important is, I guess, being an all-around football player to you, that versatility, kind of really having that in you?
Yes, sir. I feel it's all instinctive. I feel like I'm a very instinctive player. I trust my gut. You know what I mean? Being instinctive comes with wins and losses, but definitely I would say morely wins. Sometimes, you make up big you make big plays and then you might give up big plays, but I feel like being instinctive and not playing like a robot, I think a lot of people get into just playing a robot and doing their job, and I've been trying to work on, moving around, disguising coverage, just getting ready for that next level college and NFL speed.
Well, and I've been talking on the podcast because people have always asked, like, if you chose Notre Dame, like, where would you fit defensively? And I'm like, literally, like, I think you could be a field safety. I think you could be a boundary safety. I think you could. I even threw out the like, if Notre Dame needed a nickel in early on in your career, like, you could do that too, in my
Yes,
opinion.
sir.
I'm curious, like, not even just Notre Dame, but like, I guess overall. Well, how many different positions are people looking you as? Like, are schools that are talking to you about maybe potentially playing nickel early? Has it mostly just been as a free safety, strong safety? Like, positionally, where do they see you?
So yes, sir. So actually, at first, first camp, I actually went recruiting for a corner instead of safety. So some schools corner safety, but a lot of schools have been talking to me about the star position, the nickel.
Yeah.
So they've been saying a lot of nickel.
You remind me a little bit of Minka Fitzpatrick, and I know that's another Pittsburgh guy right now. After starting with Miami, so I see a little bit there because I think you are where the game is going, the modern game. Because like I think we fall in love with labels too much of players, and it's just like Ivan Taylor's a defensive back, right? Because he can do so
Yes,
many
sir.
different things for a defense.
Right.
So I love that answer, man. I absolutely do. Well, let me ask you because you mentioned the instincts. Have you always been just a naturally instinctive person? Is it from watching your dad? Is it growing up around all the great athletes that you've been able to, I'm sure, to be introduced to and grow relationships with? Like, where does that instinct come from?
Yes, sir. I definitely think it's just I feel like I've grown up with it. I feel like if I see something and I trust my gut, I feel like I'm gonna just go at it 100%. Sometimes the coach, if you mess up, you'll get yelled at, but that's what
Sure.
football is. We make mistakes, and
Yeah, man. No, I definitely, yeah, because it feels like you just see the game so advanced for your age. You know what I mean? Like it's just because some guys I feel like are great athletes, but they don't see the game well, so they react slowly, right? Like you are a guy that I think reacts very quickly. So I guess my last couple of questions for you, Ivan. Again, I really appreciate the time that you've been giving me today, man. So
yes, sir, for
uh,
sure.
sophomore film, watched it, loved it. Junior film, watched it, was even more impressed. What do you feel like have been a couple of things I think that you would say have been the biggest improvements in your game from maybe just sophomore year to junior year, things that you're feeling best about your game right now?
Yes, sir. I would definitely have to say like I getting better at tackling. Like I know you miss tackles, but I've just been trying to get better at tackling. I feel like that's a big thing for me. Also, man coverage, playing in slot. I feel like in slot it's a whole different game. You got to play versus tight ends, slot receivers. just as a nickel. So I've also been trying to get better at that.
I love it. So my last question for you, Ivan, I'll let you get out of here. Notre Dame obviously is pushing hard for you, man. Just where is their place in your recruitment right now? And just what are your overall thoughts about the Irish?
Oh, yes, sir. I'll definitely have to say they're definitely high up in the rankings. You know, they give me a lot of love. They're definitely top 3 for sure. For sure.
All right, and that's a great spot, obviously, to leave this interview. Again,
Yes,
Ivan
sir.
Taylor, star 2025 safety out of the state of Florida. Ivan, I appreciate you for hopping on the podcast so much, man. Best of luck throughout the rest of the process, and I hope that we can talk again very soon, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I appreciate you as well. Thank you.
There you have it, folks. It's Mr. Ivan Taylor, star safety in the 2025 class. Notre Dame is pushing for heavily, arguably the top target on the board, a priority recruit for Notre Dame. Hope you enjoyed the recruiting hour today. Make sure before you leave, if you could just hit that like button for me, subscribe to the podcast, make sure make sure to hit that notification bell. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. You can also subscribe over there. Hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving. God bless. Talk to you again very soon here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.